Welcome back, miners. My name is Nathan Asbell, and I'm a counselor here at Student Wellbeing.
And my name's Amber Johnston, and I'm also a counselor at Student Wellbeing. And it's time for your morning cup of joe. So, today we're going to be talking about overwhelm. Have you ever needed to do something and you just looked at the list of stuff you needed to do and then just sat down and turned on the television instead?
Yeah, I've been there before.
Or have you ever gotten an assignment and suddenly felt like you couldn't breathe or even think? You just felt completely held in place and you couldn't do anything?
Yeah, it reminds me of a time when I was writing my final paper for graduate school. I was stuck. I just sat there, and it took me a couple of hours to get going on it because I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
That's what we call overwhelm. So, what is overwhelm? One dictionary definition of overwhelm is to bury down deep beneath a huge mass, which is kind of apt. But when we talk about emotional overwhelm is when our anxiety becomes so engaged that we become stuck in our nervous system response. Have you ever heard of fight or flight?
Yes, I've heard of fight and flight, freeze and fawn. Those are the four I'm aware of.
Right. And so let's talk about some examples from pop culture. One of the first ones that comes to mind for me is like Katniss Everdeen in the
Yeah, the Hunger Games.
yes, in the Hunger Games series. And there are several times when she becomes very overwhelmed by the situation she's in and kind of freezes up.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when she should act, and other people kind of have to step in to push her along. She gets overwhelmed and she kind of shuts down for a bit. And then other times she gets too anxious and too involved. And I mean, at one point she almost shoots Finnick at the end of the second movie and instead shoots the sky, which of course then destroys the force field. But there are times when she freezes and there are times when she fights. So she's an interesting character to begin with. And I know towards the end of the movies, after all the trauma, she gets into fight or flight quite a bit. She has nightmares, PTSD. What else do you think of when you think of Katniss and the fight or flight?
Um, that's pretty much what I think of is when she's freezing and she almost has to be pushed forward and by other people in the movies. And there's a lot going on there because not only has she's in this game basically fighting for her life, and this is not a situation that's an everyday situation for her. And like Katniss, when we're facing something, even though we may not necessarily be fighting for our lives, when our emotional response gets overly cued, then our brains can tell our body basically that that's what's happening. We have a part of our brain called the amygdala, and when it gets fired up and we become overwhelmed, then it's releasing all these hormones to our body, telling our body that there is danger nearby when there really isn't.
Right.
So, can you think of another example of somebody from pop culture?
Well, I tend to think Lord of the Rings. There's a couple of characters from there. Frodo Baggins. Frodo gets overwhelmed quite a bit, several times in the series, when he's fighting the giant spider, when he's dealing with Gollum, when he's trying to overcome the outrageous obstacles of even getting to and through Mordor. He gets captured at one point, and his mithril gets taken from him, and the ring is missing because Sam took it because Sam thought he was dead. And so there's so many times when then Samwise Gamgee has to push him forward. It's like, you're frozen. Keep going, Mr. Frodo. We can keep going. We can do this. And even at the very end, when he's like, throw the ring in, Mr. Frodo, and Frodo struggles to do that, and that's when he has the conflict with Gollum. But also, you think about Aragorn. Aragorn doesn't want to be king. In the movie series, of course, he doesn't get the king's sword until maybe the second or third movie. In the books, he gets it. He has it to begin with. But I mean, him taking on the mantle of being king is something that he doesn't want to do because he doesn't want to be like his family before him. So part of him is frozen in that overwhelming responsibility of trying to be forced to be king, or stepping into the role of being king of Gondor. So
Right. And you can also think of Jon Snow from Game of Thrones in that as well. Because Jon Snow he is facing all of these terrible obstacles. The Night King is coming, and we've got all of this fight and strife between all these different lands, and he becomes almost frozen and very indecisive in his decision making because of everything that's facing him, and he just becomes overwhelmed.
Okay.
So what are some ways that we can deal with anxiety and overwhelm when we're feeling it? One of the first and easiest ways is mindfulness, which is using different techniques with breathing, Play-Doh, progressive muscle relaxation, taking a few minutes and just focusing on your breath. One of the ways we can do that is taking a breath in for over a few seconds, holding it, and then releasing it over 3 to 4 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. The ratio for the intake should be 1 to the outtake should be 2. So breathe, for example, if you breathe in for 5 seconds, you should slowly release that breath for 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. So you should double whatever you breathe in for. That's to prevent hyperventilation, because when we get really anxious, we can hyperventilate. So we have to purposefully slow our breathing down in order to help us to calm ourselves. But I think breathing is really, really excellent. I love the fact that, I think we both give Play-Doh out. I've seen some of our students, from the people we work with, both here at S&T and also in private practice, that have used something like Play-Doh in a kinetic way to help them to manage the anxiety they have in their body. And I think that's also very, very helpful.
Play-Doh is great because it's something that you can hold and focus on. And sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's hard for your mind to focus. And so having something in your hand that you can physically handle and look at and smell and touch, it really can help us have something to direct that feeling towards. And then just squishing it through your hands. You don't even have to make anything, but just kneading it like a stress ball, that can provide a tremendous amount of mindfulness. And then if you want to make something, if you want to roll it in a ball or make little flowers or make a big long snake and curl it up, that all helps too. It's just the act of using the Play-Doh, and it's got the smell of it is very distinct, and it brings back those wonderful childhood memories for most people, and that just adds to it and helps with the relaxation. Another thing that we can do is look at our thoughts and our beliefs and determine if they're realistic. So first we want to say, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? So you're facing a test and you say, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen if I fail this test? Okay, well, I'll still have a B in the class. Is that the worst thing ever? What can I do to bring my grade back up if I don't do well on this test? And then we look at what's most likely to happen. Then we look at that most likely scenario and we say, how long would it affect us? So we get a B on the test. We didn't fail it. We got a B on the test. How long is it going to affect me? A week, a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years, lifetime, or is this a life and death situation? And then we determine what's good enough. So, okay, I didn't get a 95 on the test. Maybe I got a 70 on the test. Is that good enough to be able to reach my goals? What do I need to have to be able to get what I need? What is the minimum grade I would need to get on this test to pass, or to get the grade that I want to get? And handle what you can and treat yourself with kindness. The next step is learning to say no. We don't have the ability to do everything. You can be there for a friend who needs to talk without having to take on their emotional pain. Maybe right now you've got so much on your mind that you can't listen to somebody else talking about their emotional problems or their situation that they're in. But what you can do is you can go to a movie with them, or you can sit and look at the stars, or maybe take them skating, or go do something with them and just be present. Another thing you can do is ask for help. It's okay to need help sometimes. We all do. You can go to the Student Success Center, you can go to care management, you can email a professor, and you can even come up here to counseling and talk to somebody up here.
I do this sometimes, even though I'm a professional and I'm a therapist, I ask for help. Sometimes I ask for Amber's help. Sometimes I will ask for help of another therapist here at the counseling office, because I think it's very important that we work together and that we resolve things. And asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. Asking for help is actually a sign of strength, because the people around you, their strength is added to your strength. And it's this idea that you don't have to be one miner all by yourself. You can be miners many. You could be the sum total of all the strength of the people around you. And you can tap into that strength and add it to your own, but you simply have to ask. And there's no shame in asking, because, my goodness, sometimes all of us need help. Mm-hmm. And all of us need help every now and then. And so it's perfectly reasonable and perfectly all right to ask someone for help, especially if your future life and future happiness depend on that.
Absolutely. No one is an island, and we're a very interconnected and social species, and we all need help from time to time. Another thing we can do after we've looked at our thoughts and beliefs is to break up whatever task it is and make it a little bit smaller. Sometimes when we look at something like a project and it seems really huge and overwhelming, sometimes we just have to set back and break that project up into the smallest pieces we can. So you can say, okay, for the first step, I'm going to sit down and make a list of all the steps and things that I need to do to complete this project. And that be the only step that you have to take that day. And maybe when you're done with making that list, you go and take some time and do some self-care.
Absolutely. I think self-care, and something you said earlier that really struck me, is treating yourself with kindness. As you break things down into their simplest parts and you accomplish things, reward yourself, love yourself, allow yourself to be excited for the fact that you're making progress. Mm-hmm. Allow yourself those small victory dances that really show that you are appreciative of your mind and of your body, and reward yourself some. And I think it's really great to take a break every now and then to give your mind a rest and to kind of, as Stephen R. Covey said, sharpen the saw a bit and continue to refocus and reharness your mental faculties in that way. So absolutely. And being kind to yourself is so important and understated in our society today, that when we're struggling, being hard on yourself and being mean to yourself and being harsh to yourself is counterproductive. It really doesn't accomplish anything other than make you feel worse. Right. And the reality is everyone's got value. Everyone has value. And if you can treat yourself with kindness, if you can tap into that inherent value that you have as a human being, then you can really re-energize yourself, re-energize your soul, re-energize your mind and your body, and reinvigorate yourself and allow yourself to move forward. Knowing that there's someone that loves you, that you can love yourself, and that you can move forward.
Absolutely. And doing so will also give you the ability to, it'll help your ability to focus. It'll increase your performance, because you're allowing kindness to yourself. And generally for my clients, I recommend that when they do this breaking things down into pieces, that after each step that they take a 10 to 15 minute break, and then they do some self-care during that. Maybe they go and get a snack, or maybe they listen to a song that they like, or a podcast, or whatever. They take a few minutes and just take a break before they start on the next piece, whether that be on this project or whether it be on another project. So they're not facing hours of studying with no breaks. And switching tasks, that's another one. Is we need to switch tasks. So you're working on the project, and maybe you have a project and a test and this homework assignment and all these things coming up, and breaking it up so that you're working on this task for a little while, and then you're taking a self-care break, and then you're going and working on another task. And that way you're breaking up that time a little bit, so you don't get that tunnel vision and you don't get stuck and mired and overwhelmed.
Absolutely. I really like the fact that you talk about taking care of yourself. That self-care is so important. And something that you've talked to me about, and I think we've also talked about because of the work of Brene Brown, is that last piece there, treating yourself like a friend who is feeling the same things.
Right.
Like, Amber, if I were having a really hard day, how would you treat me?
Very kindly.
Right. And I would do the same for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that as therapists, I mean, not just a therapist thing, it's a human thing that when you see another person suffering, you typically show them a large amount of kindness or patience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I told someone, hey, we just found out my mom has cancer, people don't typically look at me and say, hey, sucks to be you. People typically look at me and say, I'm so sorry to hear that. Man, that's rough.
Right.
And I can't imagine what it'd be like. And I think learning to treat each other in a way that's kind and compassionate, but then learn to treat ourselves that way.
Absolutely. If you had a friend that was having a rough day, you might buy them their favorite coffee, or you might go on a walk with them, or you might watch their favorite TV show with them, or you may just sit and listen to them and give them space. There's all kinds of things that we would do for that person, and we can do those things for ourselves. We can care for ourselves. We can make our favorite cup of tea and take 5 minutes and just drink it. We can go for a walk or read our favorite, read passages from our favorite book, or whatever we need to do. We can take that time and give that care to ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, minors, and I hope you have a great day.
See you next time.
For more information about mental health and wellness, contact Student Wellbeing at 204 Norwood Hall. And you can also give us a call at 573-341-4211.
The song Happy Days is brought to us by music from www.free-stock-music.com.